Hey y'all, my name's Amanda. Welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to talk to you about 20 places to find free and inexpensive knitting and crochet patterns. This video is not just going to be a list of websites. I am going to talk about some places to find knitting and crochet patterns online, but a lot of these are going to be for finding knitting and crochet pattern books and magazines. And I actually, as I was researching for this video, came up with some ideas even I hadn't thought of before. So hopefully you'll watch this through to the end and you will find some ideas that you hadn't heard before. I'll go ahead and mention that all the links to the websites that I'm going to talk about in this video will be in the description box below. I'm going to go ahead and preface all this with I can count to 20. I cannot guarantee I will count to 20 accurately in this video. I'm reading from a list here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I may get a little mixed up. So there are 20. I have counted. Sorry if I misnumber some of them while I'm talking to you. We're going to start with number 1, which is going to be the one that I think most people are pretty familiar with, which is Ravelry. Ravelry is kind of the go-to place for knit and crochet patterns, free and paid. Designers can set up their own stores on Ravelry, and you can download the patterns for free or for a cost through like PayPal. And it also will oftentimes link to a website that has patterns or a blog that has patterns. And it's very easy to search on Ravelry by the type of project you'd like to make, the yarn weight, which yarn you use. Ravelry also has a lot of information about the yarns themselves, and it has photographs of projects for patterns. So it shows what people have made with that pattern and the way that looks in different types of yarn. And so Ravelry is a really good resource for knit and crochet. But it is not the only place for patterns online. Number 2 is Etsy. So Etsy has a lot of patterns for sale. I don't know that there's necessarily free patterns on Etsy. A lot of times people will have coupon codes and things like that for their Etsy store if you follow their blog. But Etsy is mainly paid patterns, but they can be relatively inexpensive, especially if you buy from a specific designer. They might have a bundle of, say, hat patterns or baby blanket patterns that you can get at a pretty discounted price. And in my experience, not always, but a lot of times paid patterns are, I won't say better quality than free patterns, but a lot of times paid patterns are different than free patterns. They a lot of times will have more detail and more instruction. They may be a little more complicated than some of the free patterns you can find. They have a lot more intricate work. That's not always true, but if you're more of an intermediate or advanced crocheter or knitter, then you may want to check Etsy for some of the more advanced patterns that you wouldn't necessarily be able to find for free because the pattern designer had to put a lot more effort into designing and writing that pattern. Number 3 is yarn brand websites. A lot of yarn brands have patterns on the website for that brand. A good example is Red Heart. Some others I can think of are Karen and Bernat. And you can look at pretty much any yarn brand website and they're going to have some patterns on there. A lot of those are free. Number 4 is Yarn Craft Supply websites. I have a few of those written down. Annie's, Knit Picks, Hirschner's, and then also Blueprint, which used to be called Craftsy. Those are websites that sell things like knitting needles and crochet hooks, and they also sell yarn. They sell kits. So those have free patterns in some cases. And then like Annie's, I don't know if they necessarily have free patterns, but I know that their patterns go on clearance sometimes. And so you can get a single pattern or even a pack or group of patterns for 99 cents. So those are a good place to look for patterns as well. Number 5 is YouTube. I know a lot of people learn to knit and crochet on YouTube nowadays. There may not necessarily be a written pattern to go along with what you find on YouTube, but just like people are learning to knit and crochet from YouTube, some YouTubers do their patterns in video format. So they will walk you through how to make a specific item and do a step-by-step tutorial on their YouTube channel. So that's a good place to look. Number 6 is Pinterest. I think most people know Pinterest pretty well. It can lead you to websites that have patterns, also blogs that have patterns. But sometimes if you go to Pinterest, you will find the actual image on the pin will sometimes have a chart or like a graph or a diagram for a knit or crochet item. And if you can read charts and read diagrams, then you can find patterns on Pinterest itself that you don't have to go to another website to view. You can just find the image in the pin. Number 7 is pattern websites. So these are websites that are specifically for patterns, like they just are collections of patterns. And I have a few of those written down. I will put links to everything that I mention in this video in the description. So some examples are Crochet Pattern Central, Love Crafts, Free Patterns, and Yarn Inspirations. They have just a huge database of crochet and knitting patterns. Some of them are easier to navigate than others, but I know Crochet Pattern Central has a huge, I think they have like 20,000 patterns or something, but it's pretty hard to navigate. They don't have pictures of anything. They're all just text links. But if you're looking for something specific, you can probably find it there. Number 8 is personal blogs and people who have crafting blogs. That's a good place to find patterns. You can find those a multitude of ways. Sometimes you'll find a pin with a pattern that will lead you to a blog. Sometimes in some of the other places I'm going to recommend, like groups and things like that, you can find links to blogs. And my recommendation is if you find a blog that you like the patterns on that blog, sign up for their email list. They will often let you know if they have a new pattern published on their blog. And sometimes they'll do things like knit alongs and crochet alongs. And even sometimes bloggers who have Etsy stores or Ravelry stores where they have paid patterns will, in their email newsletter or weekly email or whatever it might be, they will send a coupon code or a link to a free pattern every so often. Number 9 is the library. If you have a membership to your local library, they often have knit and crochet pattern books that you can check out, like actual physical books, which is a thing in the past, but they have books that you can check out. But they do also sometimes, I've checked my library website and I'm sure it's different depending on where you live and what library it is, but they do sometimes have ebooks that might be knitting and crochet patterns. Even if they're not patterns, they might have some books about techniques. And you also might have access through your library membership to periodical subscriptions. There's a crafting magazine that is available through my library subscription. I can access the digital version of that magazine. So library is a good place to look as well. Number 10, in line with magazines, another place to get patterns is magazine subscriptions. There are not a lot of magazines available compared to what there used to be. That used to be kind of the go-to place for people to get knitting and crochet patterns, was from magazines. But there are some that still exist. I personally had a subscription to Crochet World for a couple of years, and I looked up their pricing. I'm glancing at my notes here. I looked up their pricing just to give you an idea. For example, Crochet World, they have an issue every other month, so they have 6 issues a year, plus you get a free issue to try before you sign up for the subscription. So that's 7 issues, and they have lots of patterns per issue. And when you sign up for the print subscriptions, you get 7 in the mail with that subscription, your 6 plus your 1 free. You also get access to 2 years of back issues digitally on their website. So the price for that is $25 roughly. If you don't want the print version mailed to you, you can also just do the online subscription, which will give you a year's worth of new magazines plus 2 years of back issues, and that I think is around $20. So considering how many patterns you get, and again, these are probably going to be some more complicated patterns or more advanced pattern designs than what you might find for free. And I looked to see what other magazines are available. There's another couple of magazines put out by Interweave, and there's one for knitting and one for crochet. So there are some magazines out there. I actually like to work from paper patterns more than digital patterns. Usually I print the pattern if I find it online anyway, so I like working from magazines. Number 11 is Amazon Kindle. This is one I didn't know about until I started researching for this video. You can go to Amazon, select in the category, like you search the category that you're wanting to search within, you select that category. If you pick books, and then you can search the word crochet or search the word knitting. And then if you go to sort by price, it will bump to the top a lot of ebook, Kindle version patterns for free. So it'll say price $0, and then it'll be a lot of like ebooks or Kindle versions of knit and crochet patterns. I did not know that until I started looking into options for this video. So that is a place to get patterns for free, is Amazon, on Amazon Kindle. The next group of suggestions that I have, just want to mention, like I said before, a lot of times people learn online nowadays and magazines may seem a little antiquated, but that used to be how people got their knitting crochet patterns. I know my grandmother, one who taught me to crochet, she had, just countless knitting and crochet magazines just stacked in closets and on bookshelves. So a lot of times, if someone who has been around since before the internet passes away or can no longer see well enough to knit and crochet, which is what happened with my grandmother, they will donate or get rid of, or their family will have to find a place to get rid of all of their crochet and knitting books and magazines. So keep that in mind as I mention the next few options for looking for patterns. So number 12 is Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and Nextdoor. So those are all sort of social type sites that have within them marketplace and selling and buying and selling posts. You can make, there may not necessarily be any listed for sale on those sites, but what you can do is post on those apps or on those websites that you are in search of knitting and crochet magazines and books, pattern books. And sometimes people will have just a stack in the closet that they don't know what to do with, and will be willing to either just donate those to you, or you can go pick them up for free, or you can they'll offer them to you at a pretty discounted price. Or sometimes you can even post that you're willing to trade if you have something yourself that you're willing to give away in exchange for some knitting pattern books and magazines. So that's another option. Number 13 is Facebook groups. Same sort of thing. You may post in some of your neighborhood Facebook groups about looking for patterns for sale or to donate or to trade for. But another option with the Facebook groups, there are digital pattern Facebook exchange. There are digital pattern exchange Facebook groups. So there are groups on Facebook that are specifically for pattern exchanges, and sometimes they will even exchange like written books. Like you can ship a person a magazine or a book and they'll ship you a different one back. So you can kind of swap that way. But do keep in mind that some of those patterns are going to be paid patterns, and you want to be really careful if you're participating in those groups not to share anything that is paid. Don't share it with anyone who hasn't paid for it. Number 14, this is one of my favorite places to go, is reseller sites like eBay. There's the reseller app Mercari, and also, let's see, there was one other one. Oh, Amazon third-party sellers. So if you've never delved into it, sometimes you'll search for something on Amazon and it says available from third-party sellers, or it'll say new and used from, and it'll have a lower price. Those are actually usually people just like people who sell on eBay. They're just Amazon sellers. So it's people selling their own inventory and just selling it via the Amazon platform. So a lot of times you will be able to find knitting and crochet books and patterns, knitting and crochet books and magazines pretty inexpensively on Amazon through those third-party sellers, and also on eBay and Mercari. Not so much on Mercari, but definitely on eBay. You will find, again, someone who's inherited a large stack of books and magazines will post those for sale on eBay, and a lot of times you will get them in a lot. It might be a large number of magazines or books that they're selling as a single listing on eBay. So eBay is a good place to look for those, and you can actually set, if you're not super familiar with eBay, you can set alerts so that it will notify you whenever there's a new post with those types of items. And something cool about the reseller sites, and also on Facebook Marketplace and some of these places where you're sort of getting someone's inherited or donated collection, A lot of those will have vintage patterns, and those are really neat. I like just looking at those vintage crafting magazines, even just for the quiche element besides the actual patterns themselves. Number 15 is thrift stores, kind of in the same vein. It's hit or miss. Sometimes you'll find 0 books or magazines in a thrift store that have to do with knit or crochet, and then sometimes you will find a stack of 15 of them. And again, it seems like someone's just donated a group of things and they've gotten to that one store. So sometimes you can hit the jackpot at thrift stores. You can also find yarn at thrift stores too. Some people are kind of on the fence about buying thrifted yarn, but sometimes it's new, still has a label on it, but that's another thing. You can, just a little aside, you may be able to find yarn at thrift stores as well. A lot of times it's with like the blankets and things like that. Number 16 is used bookstores. There is a really cool used bookstore in the city where I live, and they actually have a bin out front that they put stuff in that they can't sell or don't want to sell, and it's just available for free, so you can go through and dig there. And they always put magazines there, so if they have magazines that are traded in or donated, they don't sell those in the store, but they do put them in the free bin. So sometimes I'll find craft magazines there, and then of course in the actual bookstore, used bookstore, on the shelves they have a whole aisle of crafting books. Number 17, similar to thrift stores, similar to used bookstores, is yard sales. So yard sales, garage sales, estate sales, rummage sales, whatever you call it in your part, your neck of the woods. They have different names. The dog's at the door. Sorry if you hear that. But you can also stumble on a box full of those things at a yard sale. I also collect vintage cookbooks, and if you're into that sort of thing, those are great to look for at these places too, because you'll just find someone's collection, just a treasure trove of it. But yeah, always look at yard sales, garage sales. Number 18 is brick and mortar craft stores. They will sell, there are 3 places actually at the brick and mortar craft stores that you can get free and inexpensive patterns. Of course, you can look in the clearance section and look at the books and those little, I mean, you can almost call them books. I think you've all seen what I'm talking about, but it's like, they're like 8 or 12 pages and they have, you know, a dozen or so patterns in them. You can find those. A lot of times will be on clearance because sometimes they're seasonal. They'll swap them out. They'll go on sale. So that's one, is actual books and like magazine pamphlet type patterns that they sell at the store. 2, at the store, at the brick and mortar craft stores like Hobby Lobby and Joann, Michaels, they have in the yarn section, you've probably seen these, but they have like little flyers, or little flyers you can like tear off, like a coupon at the grocery store. You might see those, but they'll have a picture on the front with the pattern, with the item, and then the pattern will be on the back, and you just, those are free. You can just tear those off, and it's usually with the yarn that they're using in the flyer, so it's just right there with that yarn. But number 3 is, this isn't free because you have to buy the yarn, but if you buy yarn, keep in mind that a lot of times on the inside of the yarn label, there may be a written pattern. On the yarn label, sometimes they will have a photograph of like a blanket or a hat, and then on the inside of the yarn label, they'll have the pattern for that item printed. Number 19 is not really so much a place to get patterns, but it's kind of a way to get patterns. You can ask friends and family members to watch this video, or just give them this list and say, hey, I'm really into knit and crochet. I'm trying to find new patterns. Here's some places that I've looked to try to get them, like the yard sales and the thrift stores. Can you keep me in mind if you see anything like that, and pick it up for me? If it's somebody in town, they may be willing to just do that for you just because they care about you and they want you to be happy. If it's somebody out of town, keep in mind it's really not that expensive to ship things anymore. Like, I've done a lot of eBay selling and things in the past, and you can ship a lot of things for pretty inexpensively as long as you're not too picky about how quickly it arrives. So if you have a friend out of town, like say you make a post on Facebook, hey, and everybody keep an eye out at your thrift stores. If you see any knit or crochet patterns or books, let me know. And they can just shove a flat rate box full of those things once they get enough of them and send it to you, and it'll be really heavy and it'll still be pretty inexpensive to ship. So, and you may also, if you have someone you know that's a friend or family member, coworker, who collects something, like maybe you know somebody that collects owls or pigs or wristwatches or, you know, something, you can talk to them and say, hey, I'll keep an eye out for you for this item that you collect, if you'll kind of keep an eye out for me for the yarn crafts books and patterns. So that's an option too. Last one, number 20, is to make a wish list of books and magazines that you might like to have and put those on a list for maybe your birthday or Christmas. And people say, what do you want for Christmas? What do you want for your birthday? Well, actually, then you can send them a link to your Amazon wish list or some items that might be for sale on eBay or Amazon, third-party sellers that you might be interested in. So you can always ask people to get those for you as gifts. I would also love it if you would share this video with anyone you think might find it helpful. Even friends and family members you think might be willing to keep an eye out for patterns for you. I personally love vintage pattern books and just vintage craft books in general. So lots of people that know that I collect those things will let me know, hey, I found this at the thrift store. They'll send me a picture while they're at the thrift store. It's $5. Do you want this? So be vocal about it. Share this list with people who might want to help you build your collection. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Thank you for clicking play, and I hope you'll consider subbing before you exit my channel. If you found this video helpful, I'd love it if you could give it a thumbs up. And thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.